Hey everybody, it's last week from the table for July 21st, 2020. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. Yes, it's last week from the table, and this is where we recap the live streams that I do every week, actual play D&D games that I do every week on my Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/Gallibond. Well, let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? All right, on Thursday night at 8 o'clock, we are playing the Sword Coast Chronicles, and right now we are going through the first chapters of the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. And the team got to the Raiders camp the other night, and they spent the whole episode, the whole session, trying to sneak around the Raiders camp, and then they finally they decided what they wanted to do is they wanted to have four of them that could pass for humans, dressed like cultists, and the two obvious ones that could not pass for humans, the Goliath and the Tabaxi, they acted like prisoners. Actually, I'm sorry, three of them who could pass for humans were cultists. The half orc, uh, they said wanted to become a member of the Cult of the Dragon, and then the Tabaxi and the Goliath were the prisoners of the group. So they approached the rear camp or rear guard, and they made their overtures, managed to bluff their way past them, got into the camp, and they went over to an area where they found a bunch of the uh, lizard tamers. And the lizard tamers are a little bit beefier, a little bit more powerful and senior members of the cult. And so, of course, the bard wanted to wanted to take a look at these lizards and see if he could do anything with them. And this amused the lizard tamers. So they allowed him to try, and he managed not to get himself bitten, but did manage to annoy the lizards. And the lizard riders had a lot of fun at his expense over that. So uh, they then, turned over the prisoners to be bound up right next to this monk that they're looking for. And the monk was quite annoyed that they came in because uh, he said that he was trying to study these cultists, and he could get away anytime he wanted to, but he wanted to allow them to question him some more so that he could learn more about their plans. By the way they ask their questions, he can kind of find out a little bit what they're up to. But now that these people are in here and are almost certainly going to get themselves caught, he feels like he was going to have to rescue them. And so they kind of made some plans on how they were going to get out that night. The monk did get taken into a cave where all the leaders of this cell of the cult are located for some questioning. Uh, and he came back out about an hour later. Was dragged back out, um, bloodied, bruised, and with some broken bones, uh, because they got very demanding in their questioning, if you will. So the party waited until they tied him up and the leaders left, and then a bunch of the different groups of the cultists started drinking, and some of them started fighting, others started singing. Uh, in other words, they kind of uh, let their guard down a little bit. So the party decided it would be a good time to try to get the monk and their companions out of there, set them free, and try to sneak away and cause a distraction. So that meant that we ended the night on a skills challenge. And the skills challenge was trying to start a fire in one part of the camp and then sneak out by another way, and try to get away before anybody could notice them. And they actually managed to succeed in that skills challenge. So we will pick up next week with them back in the town of Greenest and the fallout from what they learned escaping with the monk Leosin that was there. See if he can tell them anything once they get back to Greenest. So that's what happened on Thursday night. You can join us Thursday night at 8 p.m. and watch all the hijinks as they unfold in that particular campaign. That campaign is a lot of fun. It's very uh, humorous and kind of light campaign. Lots of RP, um, quite a bit of improv. We spent most of the session without rolling any dice. It was really kind of fun, and the players carried most of it off. Um, I enjoy those kinds of sessions because I kind of know where they are and I know sort of what the attitudes, but then with the players, the way the players throw out things, that sort of uh, will determine how the NPCs will respond. There was one point where an NPC actually, the Tabaxi, uh, after she got tied up, uh, she got a little mouthy with one of the leaders. And so the leader, I made a few rolls, and following what the dice told me, the leader pulled out her greatsword and nearly whacked the Tabaxi in two. It actually knocked her from full health uh, to zero in one blow. Fortunately, fifth edition doesn't have the critical shock rolls anymore, like some of the old editions did, where you there was a chance that you just outright die if you lost all your hit points in one blow. Um, so she didn't have to do that, but she did have to make some death saves, uh, and it also sent a reminder to the rest of the party that, oh, these guys mean business. They are. This cult is not a bunch of warm fuzzy people. All right, so that was kind of fun on Thursday night. Now, on Sundays, we have had a minor time change to our game. We are starting our games now at 2 o'clock Eastern Time instead of 2:30 Eastern Time. This will let us run from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. On the one hand, it's a little bit more kind time wise to our player that's in the UK, Ash. On the other hand, it also gives us um, the opportunity to raid another game that begins at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's a game that personally I follow and I enjoy their sessions. And for the last, I guess the last 8 months or so, I haven't been able to participate in their sessions live because they changed their date from recording on Saturdays to recording on Sundays. So now I can end my game just in time to go and watch their game. So it gives me a little bit of fun at the end of my Sunday, in addition to running my own game. So in the Walker of Waterdeep, they are still in Innistrad. They are still at the Wrathridge mine, and they're still trying to clear out the mine. Previous session, they had kind of done a walkthrough of the mine, sneaking around, found several areas where there were creatures. They had fought a bunch of creepy dolls. They had seen evidence that there were some kind of burrowing, tunneling monsters in another part of the mine, and then they had found a evidence of giant rats, or what they took to be giant rats, in another area. So now they're coming back, and they went first to the area where the rats were, uh, and they started to fight them. They discovered that these are not just any rats, but these are typhoid rats, type of rat out of Magic the Gathering. If you watch my Monster Mondays on Mondays, in a few weeks, I will be finished with all the monsters out of Ravnica, and I will eventually, probably when we leave Innistrad, I will start going through the monsters of Innistrad. When we finish up, when I finish up the Ravnica series, I'm going to go back to the monsters straight out of D&D and continue working on those. Then at the end of when we move on from Innistrad to the next plane, I will go and I will detail all the monsters that I set aside for my players in Walker of Waterdeep and Innistrad. And so I just don't want to be detailing the monsters that um, they are facing when they're still in that plane and still may be facing them. So these typhoid rats, they're very tough and they bite really hard. And they, there's a bunch of them. So they came running out and they started uh, biting the barbarian pretty good. Now for a barbarian, he has a decent armor class. He's got 18 armor class because of his high dex and some other capabilities that he has. Um, but still, they were chomping on him, and a couple of times they would bite and they would do like 20 points of damage. Now, because he was raging, he's able to half that and only took 10 points. But still, 10 points from a rat bite is pretty decent damage. They finished up fighting the rats, and they did use some pretty loud concussive spells. So I had to make some rolls during that fight, and sure enough, uh, the tremor sense of the boneyard worms, which was the tunneling creature that they had noticed. Tremor sense detected that, and so two of the boneyard worms came over to investigate. Now, Adamant, the cleric, really managed to help the party out a lot because he successfully landed a banishment on one of the boneyard worms and set it to an extra dimensional plane for a minute so that they could just concentrate and kill one of the worms. But still, that worm got in a couple of bites, and that thing bites really hard. I mean, it was biting like for 40 points when it landed. So it's a. Now, in fairness, these creatures, both the rats and the worms, they only get one attack per round. They don't get multiple attacks. But, so it bites, but when it bites hard. And it also has a special ability that it really didn't get to use because they were inside and the configuration of the area was such that it didn't really have a clean shot. But if it can charge, it's able to actually do a leap, and that leap will do additional damage and will also knock an enemy prone, potentially. So it's a pretty nasty creature. And again, Boneyard Worm is something that comes straight out of Magic the Gathering. And so I like making these creatures feel like they have abilities that reflect what the cards will do in Magic the Gathering when you're playing them in your deck. So they fought all of those. And those were two fights back to back, so they didn't have a chance to rest between those two fights. Then they went and they checked out the Galvanic Juggernaut, and they detected that there was something moving around inside it. They don't know what it is, but they said, okay, crap, we just had two tough fights. Let's not have another fight. And so they left. And they went outside. They got a short rest. They also found that the journal, or that the foreman of the miners that they brought with them, has a journal. And this journal gives a list of what all the nodes of the ores are that are in the one ore heart tunnel, or one ore heart chamber, I should say, that they found. And then they found another area that has three nodes of a different kind of metal that look like they found and exposed those nodes, and then they just left. Whoever was mining there just abandoned it. So they don't know what that is, because they're not ready to bring the miners in, but they're curious about what that is, and the miners will be able to help them identify that. Um, they found three veins of the ore that they came here to Innistrad to get, so they know that they're in the right place. They can get that. And we will just have to see what happens next week. Um, they know they need to, after they finish their rest and recover their abilities, and they're going to take a long rest, they will need to go back in and look at the Galvanic Juggernaut, which is that mining tool, try to figure out what is in there, what's moving around in there and making that noise. And then there's a couple of other areas that they have not yet explored. Um, and there's some things in there that they might want. Also, really exciting for me as the DM in the Discord, since Sunday leading all the way up to Tuesday as I record this, the group has been, for the first time in all their 7 levels, they've finally been starting to get serious about trying to decide what they want to call themselves as an adventuring company. Uh, I told them early on that a lot of adventuring groups decide on a name of an adventuring company, but I didn't want to try to suggest anything or didn't want to try to impose anything, partly because I don't know that I am the greatest with naming adventuring companies, and so it would feel a little awkward, to stick them with a name that, after a while, okay, maybe I didn't like that name so much myself. The other thing is, as a DM, it feels like that's taking agency away from the players. It's always nicer, I think, when the players get together and decide on a name for themselves. They're discussing some pretty interesting ones. The only thing I'm going to have to look up and be sure that I do is that they're not going to come up with some kind of copyrighted name that we would not be able to use in terms of talking about the adventures of, whatever the adventures of whatever the company name is. So that would be the only thing that I would do, and that would just be more just to make sure we're not going to tread on anybody's IP or infringe on somebody else's IP with the name of our group. All right, so that is what's going on. If you wish, you all, we would love to have you come and join us, twitch.tv slash Gallibond on Sundays at 2 p.m., twitch.tv slash Gallibond on Thursdays at 8 p.m., and hang out in the chat. We do have a community of regular viewers that's showing up, and there's starting to be more discussion during the games between the people in the chat, which is nice to see. And some of the players are starting to go in there so they can interact with the viewers. So that's always fun. I try to keep an eye on that, but of course, trying to run everything behind the DM screen, I'm kind of like a one-armed paper hanger, and so I don't always see what goes on in the chat. And the players are starting, the ones that monitor the chat are starting to be like, oh, hey, chat says we need to do this, because sometimes I'll forget to change a map, and we go off talking about something, and so I'll need to keep a better eye on that. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this recap. If you like all the stuff that we're doing here on Twitch or on YouTube, please click the subscribe button, post notification bell, like the videos, and then also in the description you'll find all the information about my social media platforms. You'll find all of the information on the live streams and how to follow me on Twitch and those other platforms. And leave some comments if you have any feedback on the videos we do. 7 days a week, we have new content that shows up on YouTube. Covers all different aspects of D&D. So plenty here to get into, and we have archives of current and old campaigns. I recently finished posting the archives of the entire run of the Dragon of Icespire Peak, and I have also put the I've also uploaded all the videos for the original History of D&D campaign that kind of fizzled. We are revisiting that, and those of you who have seen the new feed on Saturdays, the History of D&D Weekly, that is a lead up into rebooting that particular series. So we will be revisiting that History of D&D reboot soon, later this year. But the original series, I've uploaded all the videos. I haven't finished tagging and publishing them. So there is a feed for them, and there's a few of those episodes up there. There's also, I am working on the back catalog of uploading the Walker of Waterdeep videos and the Sword Coast Chronicle videos. So everyone, take care. Hope you have a wonderful week, and just remember that you should try your best to make your D&D game memorable so that you can have tales from your table that you can share as well. All right, good night, everybody.